my research and I was like, why are we not using this on our hair? So I did research and I was like, it's very moisturizing. It has all the B vitamins, E, omega fatty acids, all these minerals reason why I'm probably not getting everything I need in hair products because I don't know, it wasn't working. So I started taking some, talking to family members who were doing the products and then mixing in some CBD. And my hair was like, I've never had hair that's been so moisturized all the time now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the How Do You Medicine podcast, where we talk to healthcare professionals doing healthcare their way. I'm your host, Dr. Nancy Joseph, aka the Dynamic Doc. And today, our esteemed guest is Dr. Elena Stinson, who is a board-certified emergency medicine physician and also a trichologist and also a dog mom. But she started her post-secondary education at Spelman College, where she got a chemistry degree, a bachelor's of science in chemistry. And then she went on to complete her doctorate of medicine at Meharry Medical College. So she's Meharry made. And then she went and got her master's of health policy and management at Harvard School of Public Health. And if that's not enough, she's actually currently in an MBA program, a master's of business administration program at Babson College Olin Grad School of Business. And so that's the education part, but she doesn't stop there. She recently served as the associate medical director at the Reggie Lewis mass vaccination site, and she's currently the president of the New England Medical Association. And that is an organization geared towards really building community amongst Black physicians in the New England area. And then in all of that encompassing, she's also the founder and CEO of Safo Hair, which gets to the root of it all, they say, by combining herbal traditions with the benefits of CBD. And so today, on today's episode, we're going to be going to get to the root of it all and then some on today's episode with Dr. Elena Stinson. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I was listening to that. I was like, that just sounds insane.
And it's you. Yeah, a lot of people say that, but it's you.
Sounds insane.
But yeah, welcome. So let's get into it. You're emergency physician, and a lot of people we are thankful for you guys, but it is kind of like this busy environment, and it's kind of like a lot at once. So what led you to, want to be in emergency medicine?
I actually didn't know I wanted to do emergency medicine. I thought I actually was always from like middle school up until med school, I was going to be a psychiatrist. Like that was it. I was like,
okay,
to be a psychiatrist. That's what drove me into medicine. I wanted to help people. I started to see things even in like middle school. I was like, people need help. They could just sit on my couch because you watch TV. Like they'll just come in and lay on the couch. Because back then it was like, have a seat on my couch. But I think when I got to med school, I was really put off by like it didn't fit well with my personality, and that's what put me off. There was nothing wrong with psychiatry. I kind of switched over to like neurology. I was really intrigued with like the study of the brain and like the neuroscience behind it. I'd taken some neuroscience classes in college, and I was like, I'm doing neurology. So I get to med school and I figure out I had to do internal medicine first. I was like, wait, what? I have to do internal medicine before I go into neurology? I can't just do neurology. They're like, no, ma'am. I'm like, but no, I can't do this. And then I did and then we started going into our systems, and then I really fell in love with cardiology because the physiology and the physics, because I was a math and science person. But then again, had to do internal medicine. I was like, I got to rethink my life. Going into third year, I was like, I apparently am not going to be a doctor.
And by internal, you mean like, so you have to do like a whole different residency.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't understand. I want to do one residency. I want to get to where I'm trying to get to. What are you talking about? And they're like, no, what we're saying is you got to do this residency, and then you got to do another specialty. Yeah. And you're like, that wasn't part of the plan. What you talking about?
Well, I also didn't like internal medicine. So it was just like, I can't do that. I just want to be a cardiologist. Yeah, I didn't like it. didn't fit my personality. And then went into my rotations and found out like I love doing rotations on surgery. I love doing anesthesiology. I love catching babies in OB. And I went to Meharry, so we don't have a lot of residents. So a lot of times as students, we were stepping up.
Oh, nice.
So I was actually like doing stuff and I loved it and got to intubate a patient, you know, of course, with the assistance of the attending and like do all this stuff. And I didn't realize I actually loved all that stuff until I got to emergency medicine. One day, one of my attendings in emergency medicine, she looked up, she goes, "What are you still doing here? Go home." I was like, I guess I was having too much fun. I didn't realize it. So that's when it dawned on me. I was like, maybe it's emergency medicine. I like surgery. I like anesthesia. I like OB. But there's things about all those things I didn't like, but I liked it in the setting of emergency medicine. And I remember going home telling my mom, I was like, "Mom, I figured it out." Because I was like really, like I think everybody probably goes through this. They get to a point where they don't know what they want to do. Some people, not everybody. And I tell my mom I wanted to do emergency medicine. She was like, "Well, yeah, I could have told you that." I'm like,
"Oh, all right, Mom.
Let me sit over here and
all right, Mom."
Because my parents are both in medical spaces, and she was
like,
"Are
they? Oh, okay."
Like, you had to figure it out on your own. I was like, "Thank you."
She said, "Oh yeah, I mean, I knew you was emergency medicine."
Yeah, she like personalities.
Okay. So then now now what is like third year in med school?
Third year, and then I'm all in, you know, subspecialties, applications, applying to residency programs, not second guessing it like I was with the other things, and I just
gotcha.
Right. It felt right, so I went and I continued on with it.
Got it. So everything else, or what you came in thinking that you were gonna do, kind of made you feel like, do I want to do this? Mm-hmm. Oh, and then now you're just kind of like, this is it. This makes me feel good. This makes me don't feel like I'm like stressing and working. So that's good to know, you know, for anyone that's watching this, that's like in med school, or they're trying to figure out what to do. One of the key things is to figure out what doesn't feel like a rotation. What doesn't make you like, oh God. Yeah. I guess I'll have to do that again. So that's great advice. Okay, so we talked about how you got into emergency medicine, but one thing I really wanted to touch on is, you know, here, of course, in the podcast, I talk about your way of doing medicine, and you did something a little different, right? Because you do locums actually with emergency medicine. So tell people like what really the idea of locums is, and how you came kind of to the point of, let me do this instead of your typical, I'm gonna do, you know, I'm just gonna be at this hospital and that's where I'm gonna be for however many years.
Yeah, so a lot of it was just a lot of different storms that kind of created and pushed me into the locum space, almost like the perfect storms, like multiple. Okay. Yeah, so I, you know, really was passionate about health policy, and then really looking at like disparities in patients, and had applied to Harvard School of Public Health, got in, but I wanted to go and work on my own. So I went to Baltimore, ended up working there, but just getting a job there, just giving my background with my residency, was a little challenging. So I ended up actually taking a job kind of per diem locumish at a military base outside of Baltimore. And then I got my job in Baltimore, and I said, well, I have both jobs, so let me just balance them, because emergency medicine is one of those things where you can try to really structure your own schedule. You know, you can balance multiple things and do emergency medicine. You know, when you're at work, it's stressful, but then when you leave, your time is your time. You do what you want to do with it. So I was balancing a full-time ER job in Baltimore, and then working this other little per diem locums gig on the side. And then what happened while I was at Baltimore, I loved it so much that I was thinking about staying and not coming to Boston. But what happened is they had a takeover of the hospital, and let me explain that a little bit. Like, they have these.
Oh, I said that sounds like a good party, or a good.
No, it was not
like a bad, like, you know, like Civil War issue, a takeover.
It was very disruptive, and this happens often, and people outside of medicine or outside of the department don't really feel the effects. But what happened was, most emergency departments are run by groups. And then not very common here in Boston, but outside of Boston, this is a common thing. There's groups that run and own the emergency departments. They're not run and owned by the hospitals. So we had a group that was there when I came in, and then another group came in and was like, and this was happening a lot around Maryland, a lot of acquisitions and big hospital systems taking over community hospitals, and it was just happening very rapidly. And this group came in and took over, and it was kind of felt last minute because they don't tell the staff this is happening until like a month or so before it happens. And then when they come in, they decide if they're going to bring their new staff in or what's going to happen. So basically, they got rid of like, I think all the doctors except for like 4. I was one of the 4, and then they got some of the nurses left, and it's uncomfortable because everyone's so used to a way of working in an environment. But when a new management team comes in, a new group of doctors come in, people get uncomfortable and they start leaving. So it was just like, I don't want any of this. And then it really exposed me to how disposable we were as physicians. And I still had my job in Virginia. So I was like, if all else fails, if I decide to stay, I am going to still work at this job. But I was like, maybe this is my time to just go to Boston and figure it out, and I was like, I probably would never go back to a full-time job again. And I realized how to balance these things because of the things that happened prior to that resulted in me getting those 2 jobs in the first place. I learned how to balance everything at that point. And then I learned to really take control of my schedule, how my money's coming in, and then, where I was going to work in my time. So that's what that taught me. So then when I came to Boston, I'm in school and I'm still negotiating my time, my contracts as I'm in school, because I have to now negotiate work around school. And then when I finish school, I'm still negotiating. I'm still in this mind frame of like making and planning your own schedule, working on your own time, and still doing the other things that I enjoy doing, like policy work at the time. So it's just kind of how I fell into locums, because I really wanted to make sure I could still work and then do the other things that I love to do.
Okay. So then when you were in Maryland, had you already gotten into Harvard?
Mm-hmm.
But you hadn't started yet?
No, I took a year, like a gap year, or what do they
call it? Like, thanks for accepting me, defer for a little bit,
deferred,
let me figure things out.
Deferred, yeah.
Got it. Oh, good that you could defer.
Because
I know some schools are like, you come now or you don't come. Thanks. Yeah. Okay, cool. So we're doing, life allowed me to figure out like things on my own. And then I got to Boston to do this like public health and all of that. And then after that, actually, while we're in the, advanced education, doing things extra, let's talk about what led you to say, you know what, I think I may need a master's, an MPH, because you could have been like, I have a terminal degree. Yeah. I can do things in health. I can do all that stuff. What led you to say, okay, let me get a public health degree?
It's funny because I had a friend that was always telling me to look at it. I was like, I thought MPHs were just the dumbest thing on the face of the earth. Like, I really did. And, when I got to residency, I started to see things that weren't right, and no one else seemed to care about it. Like, I consistently saw African-American women in their 50s coming in with spontaneous head bleeds from blood pressure being too high because they couldn't get their access to their medications. And I did residency training in a state where, of course, very low income, Black people were disproportionately affected just in the healthcare system as a whole, with the worst health outcomes across the country. So these types of things, I was like, should not be happening in a developed country. It just shouldn't. Like, I should probably see these things in another country, but they probably wouldn't have the rates of blood pressure that we have here, but whatever. So my brain was always going in these weird circles, and no one in my program really thought about things the way I did. And I remember going to my program director saying, I think I want to do health policy. And I remember sitting at his desk, and he looked at me really perplexed, like, what is that almost? And was like, I think you just need to focus on emergency medicine. And I'm the type of person where I'm like, you don't tell me what to do. I was like, I want to address the issues that are happening to my community, So I never told them I was doing this, but I also worked at like as a medical liaison at a local clinic, developing out their educational programs, because I was really passionate about getting this exposure to the community in a way that I didn't know how to get it. So that's how I ended up applying to health policy, to better understand our healthcare system, the policies that impact people, because I realized in that educational space that people don't respond or really value education sometimes, or don't know what the need of it is, but they respond and behave and interact with our healthcare system based on policies. So if the policy's there, that's what's going to dictate how people interact with our healthcare system.
Got it.
That's what drove me to seek it out, to get a deeper understanding for myself.
Okay. So now, and I'm going to kind of fast forward, but go back a little bit, because now we've gotten, you know, bachelor's, doctorate, master's, and then now we're like another master's. So help me understand now the MBA side. Now, that's not to say that an MPH isn't, you know, MBA at all, right? Because one is like, you know, health policies, and the other one is specifically in, you know, business administration. So we'll get into, you know, the other things that you have going on, but what ended up, you know, getting you to the MBA side?
And I think, and I want to preface, like, none of these degrees are even necessary just to do the work that I'm passionate about.
Okay.
But I also think that for me, I am just someone who wants a deeper understanding and learning of things. And I also think there's another layer to this for us as Black women entering into spaces. There's oftentimes that we have to prove ourselves in different spaces. And that oftentimes has to be with a degree or something that you've already accomplished. And I have these conversations with my friends a lot, but then you get to a point where you have almost, I want to say, too many degrees, and then people are like, what's wrong with you, you know? But I also feel like oftentimes you can't easily walk into doors the same way that our white counterparts can, without bringing some type of proof and setting it on the table saying, see, I can do this type thing. Right. So I think, you know, after the health policy thing, I got really involved with policy stuff with like organized medicine groups and things like that, you know, and it's slow moving policy. And I really started to see things a little bit differently throughout the pandemic. And just how investment spaces, private equity, venture capital is really playing a really huge role in how medicine is going to look 5-10 years from now. And I think this is something we don't think about as physicians, because we're always focused on patient care, patient care, patient care. But I think this is really going to impact how our healthcare system is run and operated over the coming years, as we're starting to see more biotech, more tech things really developing and propping up and being supported by insurances now, that we're going to be like kind of in the dust, I think, as physicians.
Oh, okay. I'm about to say, I didn't know if you meant, okay, so you're just like, y'all need to get with the program. And I'm about to let me get this program so that I can get with the program.
And I'm particularly interested in like private equity and the role they play in the delivery of healthcare. So that's kind of why I'm in business school, just understanding that side of things, and getting a solid foundation and understanding, because in my mind, I'm like, I need to speak the language of business. So like we speak the language of medicine, which people typically can't do unless you're in healthcare. And like you can't sit at a table, or it's harder to sit at a table and have intelligent conversation unless you speak that language. So I'm just kind of interested and curious and kind of learning the space around healthcare private equity right now.
Got you. Okay.
I don't have like a trajectory. It's just like my mind. I'm just like, I just want to know. I want to be able to.
But it sounds like you feel like you're just like, this is an important fund of knowledge to acquire. And so I'm going to make sure I acquire that so that I can just be the best knowledge tools, whether it's, based on the landscape currently in the upcoming, sounds like, landscape of medicine. Okay, so we're working on that. And at some point though, there was like, you were a health policy analyst, but also you were writing for, I think, policy prescriptions. So where did that fall in? Was that after your MPH, while you were residency, that type of thing?
It started, I think, after residency, and then throughout the MPH. The analyst job came after the MPH as well. So that was kind of like me trying to figure out my policy footing.
Oh, got you. Right, because when you were doing your master's, was that kind of like trying to figure out, okay, what health policy footprint do I want to leave? And then you just kind of like worked in that. And how did you even, is that just kind of like was a job posting and you're just like, let me do that? Or did you get some connections doing your MPH?
So policy prescription was run by a friend that I had worked with in Maryland. And he knew, and he was also very interested in policy. So we both, were like, we both had this passion and, he's like, why don't you do some writing? We did some writing, some podcasting and all that good stuff. And this was like in 2013 before podcasts were like super popular, but people were doing them. So we were just like writing on different policy topics and things like that. I had a broad interest of like addressing issues in safety net facilities and like the reimbursement rates and then the quality and access to care, which could mean a lot of things. So I was trying to figure out where specifically in that space I wanted to be. In my brain, I was like, once I finish at Harvard, I'm going to go work in the White House for Obama, but that's not that easy. And I never quite made it. And then Obama left the White House. So I was like, yeah, okay, plan B. So then just connections, and with professors, I landed a role as the health policy analyst that I worked for a state agency for a little while.
Got ya. So then what would you say from that experience that helped you be like, all right, I know from this experience, I'm gonna do such and such? Like what did you gain from that helped you figure out the next step?
I think I realized that, policy work is so slow moving, and then to be in it as an ER physician, like we're always moving, going. I needed to be in an environment that wasn't, I don't know, I just realized I could not be in those types of environments working on one project and then understanding that your project or your scope or your work would change with every administration that came in. Policy is so tied to an administration. So that to me became very demoralizing. And I was like, I needed a policy structure where I could have input and then just kind of keep having input and adjusting certain things as things went along, and not have my job so tied to specific projects and policy work and legislation, because that didn't fit me. It didn't feel right anymore. Similar to like when I was picking a specialty. It didn't feel right.
Like this felt right. Let's do that.
Felt right. This doesn't feel right. Yeah.
Got it. So then, you know what? I never thought about that. Like, yeah, it's your policy and your administration is like, oh yeah, we have a headway. Administration change.
And if you don't get it done before that person's no longer in office, it's like,
I never thought about that.
Yeah, that was woof.
Oh man, but you're right though.
Yeah.
Yikes. Okay, so that's actually a good perspective, because I really never thought about it like that. Okay, so then now you're like, okay, so health policies, I did policy prescriptions, we did that. I kind of figured out, because you're trying to figure out, okay, where do I fit in? And also what I like, what I don't like, what I feel fulfilled in, that type of thing. And then at some point, NEMA and Safo came in, at both of which you're like the head honcho of both. So let's first talk about NEMA, which is near and dear to my heart, New England Medical Association. And for those who don't know, there's a huge organization called the National Medical Association, which really is an organization tackling health disparities nationwide and really just advocating for African American, just in minority patients in general. And it is a large body of people who care about those things. And in the National Medical Association, there's different branches regionally. And in the New England area, NEMA happens to be that branch, and EMA. And Dr. Stinson happens to be the president of the New England Medical Association. So talk a little bit about, NEMA and, the crux of that.
So throughout the process of doing policy through organized medicine, I really honed in on my leadership skills, understood how things worked, But I felt there was a missing piece, and I became frustrated even with organized medicine. Not to where I wanted to leave, but I was like, something's missing. I don't understand. Like a lot of what we were working on was for the general population, and we know a lot of times general does not mean it's going to really address the needs of the Black community. And like I felt like a lot of stuff that we were doing needed to happen. It was very important work, but I also felt like we were leaving some conversations off the table. And then, when there's only a few Black people in a space, it's harder to convince a larger group that this is important. So I remember, and I'd gotten a lot of mentors and advisors along the way throughout this work I was doing, just really blessed in that, and to be able to have people that believed in me. And I had a mentor for like 2 years saying, well, we had this organization, it was called New England Medical Society at the time. She was like, we tried to put it back together 7 years ago, we failed, but you really need to think about doing it. I think you can do it. And she did this for 2 years, right?
Like, we got this organization, we need to revamp it.
Yeah,
it was there, but not there no more. Like, it's dormant. We need a catalyst.
It wasn't even dormant, it was gone. Like they had stopped it in the 80s. Like it was pretty vibrant in the 80s, and then it was gone after. Like,
oh, got it.
Yeah, so they needed somebody to come in, restructure it, just start it back up. And she, for 2 years, and this is somebody I very much respect, and I was like, I don't have time to do this. And then I was like, look, I'm going to send out an email. I didn't even know that many Black people. And I realized I didn't know any Black people. And I was just like, I'm starting to feel isolated. I said, maybe I need to kind of look at this and then see who's here. Because I didn't even know a ton of Black people. I didn't know Nancy, by the way. So Nancy was really instrumental in this. And like, I've met her through this process, and I've met so many other Black physicians.
Nancy who?
Nancy.
Oh, I said Nancy who?
She was one.
I don't know why I thought you said a different last name.
Nancy was one of the first people, y'all. So I sent this email out, and I didn't know anybody. I hit up like 4 other Black doctors I knew. I was like, do y'all know any other Black doctors in the area? They were like, yeah. And your name came up, and I remember emailing you, and you were like, well, I know a couple other people. I was like, well, tell them all to show up, So I found this place, and 15 Black doctors showed up. I was like, whoa, there's 15 of us here, like a whole 15.
a whole 15.
And I knew, for me, coming from Meharry, where everybody was Black.
Yeah, Meharry is an oasis in the middle of.
Yeah, so I was like, 15 doctors showed up. I started asking questions, and everybody had the same issues I was having. I'm like, so if you 15 are here, there has to be 15 more plus exponential. So, Nancy, that was the night we met, and then we sat down and started having conversations and just building out the organization. Like, you were like one of the true founders with me on this process. So even though I know things get overwhelming sometimes and people don't realize the role they play, but if it wasn't for you, we probably wouldn't even be here at this point.
You think so? I don't know. Really? Oh, you're too kind.
Because I was not head all toes down for this, You
weren't like 10 toes down, 2 feet in. You weren't. No. Well, I think it's important for people to know that, like, you could be like, yeah, I'll do this, and then everybody else be like, no.
It's the people you have like that. Like, it was you, and then a couple other people was like, no, we need this. And that belief from you guys, my mentor. And then as I started to see how important this was, we just dug in, and then people started stepping up, like, I'll help. And like, we're here, we have like almost 1,000 people in our listserv. We have members and partnerships around the city of Boston. Like, people are recognizing us. We want to be at the table when these legislative conversations are happening, because remember, that was a piece I felt we were missing from in my organized medicine policy work. It wasn't this deeper dive into like the impact that medicine or our system was having on the Black community, which, we got started, like, we got our 501c3 founding in February, right before the world shut down. So then at this point, the time was almost perfect, because the world started to see all these health disparities, and like every day it's being blasted on TV, which gave us like a foot in to come in and just kind of continue building and growing this organization. Like, see what we're telling you guys? Like, this is why we're doing this work. So it was almost perfect timing.
Yeah, and now NEMA's doing all of this, hosting and lots of people, as you said, and now there's, more of a digital presence of the New England Medical Association. And and you got, go ahead and throw out the website because people can buy merchandise from t-shirts to hoodies to bags. So what's NEMA's website before I forget to shout it out?
Don't cringe. Nancy told me not to do this when we created the domain. But it's NEMA, NEMA hyphen Nancy hyphen NMA. So NEMA, NMA, the national organization.org.
NEMA-NMA.org, where you can get your merch. You can sign up to be in a committee. You can sign up to be a member. You can sign up to be a mentor or mentee. All things New England physicians and promotion thereof.
And we have a lot of people reaching out to us now for like speakers, like for paid speaking gigs. So we created a sign up list if you're interested in becoming a speaker. And then we also have a list if you want to be, just to put your practice on the website so people know you're here. Because we also get calls, people are looking for Black physicians. And a lot of times I hear people say, I've never seen a Black physician. I've never had a Black physician. I never met a Black physician. And to me, that blows my mind. So it'd be really nice if we could start kind of getting a list of like Black physicians and practices so that the public can go to and see,
Yeah, I think that's important. And so speaking of like just representation, whether of health in general, one of the important parts of health is our hair. So, now, as if what you're doing wasn't enough, you now have, founded this whole like hair company and this kind of getting to the root of it all movement. So talk to me about how that came about and how, how you decided, this is the route I'm going to go to.
All of this stuff I kind of feel like I fell into. Like the school, I was intentional. I did that to myself, But like the NEMA thing, my mentor for years was encouraging me, and she serves as an advisor now, continuously, supporting and lifting us up. But I had early on in my time here in Boston, I had quite a few health issues. And I started to see like some major changes in my hair. I had always had thick, long hair. And I remember in middle school, some boy told me I had weave in my hair. And I was like, it's my hair. What are you talking about? So I'm used to like my hair being a certain way. And like now it's stringy and falling out. And I remember going to a dermatologist and asking for her assistance. And she hands me this stuff. And I'm like, I'm Black, right? I can't use this. I was just like trying everything on the market. Like, we get all of our stuff a lot of times from like the Asian beauty supply stores and Walgreens, and now we have Ulta and Sephora. I mean, things are a lot more accessible, and we're also seeing a lot more products, but I couldn't find anything that worked for my hair. I had 4C hair, and I come from a family where they had always done hair products, and my hair was thick and full and long because of those hair products, but it was grease. Back in the day, we used to grease our scalp. Wasn't good for my skin. I would break out acne and had to stop using it. So I was like learning about the health benefits of CBD. I had really bad eczema and sinus infections all the time. And I started taking CBD. I was like, why don't I get into the cannabis space, And I went down all kinds of routes. I was like, I can grow hemp. I had all this land. We have all this family land. I was like, I could just grow some hemp. I got I had my hemp growing license. And I was like, Elena, stop. You're not about to go nowhere and be a farmer. So I started just really digging in my research, and I was like, why are we not using this on our hair? So I did research, and I was like, it's very moisturizing. It has all the B vitamins, E, omega fatty acids, all these minerals reason why I'm probably not getting everything I need in hair products, because I don't know, it wasn't working. So I started taking some, talking to family members who were doing the products and then mixing in some CBD. And my hair was like, I've never had hair that's been so moisturized all the time now. And it actually has like this natural shine to it now consistently. And I was like, I have to get this out and share this with people. So that's how that started. And again, it was like a lot of like, I don't know, I shouldn't do this. And then there's those people that were like, you got to do this. I got your back. You got to do this. So that's kind of how that got started.
And so at first, like, where did you first make, because you sounds like you first made some products for yourself. So is that something like in your kitchen, you like, whoa, so how did?
I actually found a chemist in Maryland, black chemist, who was cosmetic chemist. I started talking to her. I actually did like a ton of interviews with a bunch of like cosmetic chemists. And I found her and I was like, you're perfect. Let's, make this formula, 2 formulas. I gave her the ingredients I wanted, and she has a background to know what percentages, what's right, the pHs and all that good stuff. That's the one thing I didn't want people's hair to be falling out, and then they blame the doctor, like, my hair's falling out, I got mold growing in my stuff. She knows all that stuff because I got just an undergrad degree in chemistry, and she started doing the formulations, and I was like, my God, this stuff is amazing. So I just started sharing it with friends and family, and that's how, getting their feedback, and everyone was raving about it. So I was like, well, I guess I should keep going.
Got it. So it wasn't, you thought, so you first used CBD just for a different purpose?
Well, I was using CBD tinctures for my eczema and my sinus infections, which, by the way, I have not had any of that in like 3 years because I use CBD. And then I was like, if it's doing that, because it's so anti-inflammatory, I was like, and it's moisturizing, I was like, can we try it in hair products? And that's what we did. So.
Gotcha. So you weren't like, you're like,
oh,
okay.
No.
You're like, before I do this, let me have somebody that and that helps from the experience you had in Maryland. Mm-hmm. Keep that's a good lesson to keep your connections. Mm-hmm. Because you don't know, keep and nurture them, because it's not like, oh, I need this person now, so I'm gonna keep them. I don't need this person now, so I'll never talk to them again. And you know what I mean? Like, connect, or maintain connection. And then now you're like, wait a minute, I actually know, because everybody doesn't know cosmetic chemists. Mm-mm. I don't know that I've ever met a cosmetic chemist.
I actually didn't know. I didn't know they existed. And I just, a lot of this is just me digging, asking questions all the time about everything and learning. Because like, I feel like I know all about manufacturing now, like supply chain, e-commerce. I don't profess to be a professional, but these are things that I 2-3 years ago had no clue were a thing.
Okay, so Dr. Stinson, we talked about the, Safo Hair and, your journey to start that. So what would you say to people who, want to start a company, but maybe they're just not sure, okay, should I start, whether it's hair care or just skincare or whatever that company is, and they really want to start it, but they're not sure if they just should, like you said, you had doubts, like, should I just not maybe just do this in a small scale just for me, or a large scale? Talk about how you made the decision to just go for it, and what challenges they should be aware of.
So I'm always a person that like dives in head first. I'm a little cautious. I'm be like, is it cold? I mean, you got snakes in there, but I'm always going to dive in head first. But I think it's important before you make a decision to do your market research and see if it's a viable idea in the first place. You need to ask questions. If you're serving a certain community, figure out what it is, but always do your research to understand, is there an opportunity here for me to step in and do good? And, for me, I'm always listening, watching, reading stuff, just trying to figure out what angle someone else hasn't taken yet, because that's what's going to position you to be more valuable in a certain space. So maybe you're doing that one thing and there's a lot of other people doing it, but what angle are they missing, And I think whenever you're thinking about jumping into a space, you need to think like that. You can't just be like everybody else, and you have to be offering something that's going to differentiate you from what the crowd is doing. So, 1, understanding your market, 2, understanding there's an opportunity, and 3, differentiating yourself so that you can carve out your niche.
Carve out your niche. I love it. And what challenges did you find, what challenges should one be aware of, being like, okay, well, you know what, I hear Dr. Stinson, I'm actually in the place where I've decided to go for it. But what would you tell them, kind of like, you know, couple of nuggets like, okay, be aware of this and make sure you do this?
You're not going to know what those challenges are sometimes until you hit them. And it depends on what industry, what space you're trying to move in. But I would just say when you hit those challenges, don't cower down, like don't like hit them head on and then figure out how to get through them. Because if you don't face the challenges when you get there and you don't sit and think about, okay, maybe I should do this differently. And then once you figure that piece out, it's almost like you have gotten the key to the secret door and opened it up. So there's always going to be challenges. So I can't say there's any specific challenges, but I think if you're moving into the entrepreneurial space, to always be thinking about like your cash flow and your revenues and the financial side of things. I think that's one thing we don't think about or prioritize as much. So that's one thing I would say prioritize, but I don't know if I can specifically say a challenge. You just have to recognize they're going to come and you need to find somebody that had, like, I don't know, remember that game on, was it like Nickelodeon or something, where they would run through these different rooms and try to find a key to move into the next room? Like, that's what it's like, you know, like you run through the room and you're like, oh crap, there's a big old rock in front of the door. How do we move the rock? Like, you gotta, that, I don't know, maybe I watched too many games as a kid and I'm still applying them to life, but I mean, that's what it's like.
And that's okay. And you know what? Those things could be multi-purpose for entertainment and for real life.
Yeah.
And I think I like that. I think, you know, when the challenges come, don't shy away from them, hit them head on, push through them, move through them, figure out how to maneuver to them, and be careful not to look at that and be like, oh, I shouldn't do this then. There's the challenge. Like, challenges will come for sure.
Right.
And I think that's great advice.
And you may have picked a really bad idea too. I'm not gonna lie. Some people pick some bad ideas, but I've seen some entrepreneurs realize they picked a bad idea, but then they also see an opportunity in another direction that kind of fed off of the lessons they learned on that bad idea. So no opportunity or no learning experience is bad. No experience in life is bad. It's a learning opportunity for you to kind of navigate the waters. So yeah.
Yeah, I always say the acquisition of knowledge is never a waste of time.
I like that.
So then, obviously, you're a woman that wears many hats with many talents and do all of those things. So how do you balance it all? And two, like, what have you found in your journey that's been the most challenging?
Balancing, again, it goes back to me balancing those two jobs at the beginning and making sure that, you know, having a real good handle of my work schedule in the ER. You know, I've now set aside 2 days that I do telemedicine work. I don't go into the ER as much as I used to, but when I do, I set aside a couple weekends every month to do that. So it's not like I'm working, like I was just doing like 10, 18 shifts a month, you know, before all of this, but like I'm not doing that anymore. It's a lot less. So I learned how to balance it that way. And just really being really meticulous about my schedule, you know. And I think the other piece, I talked to the NEMA team about this a lot. I was like, you have to be extremely organized in order to like be most efficient. And I think what people don't realize, the impact of like, you can't do it all alone. You have to bring in a team and people to kind of help and support in areas that can cut time down for you. So I think that's important, being extremely organized and bringing in the right teams.
Perfect. And what has been the most challenging in your journey thus far?
I don't know. I feel like when you're doing what you're supposed to do in life, the answers kind of come to you, or the right people step into your life when you feel like it's becoming a challenge. And that's kind of how it's been for me over the years. But I think right now, in this moment, the most challenging thing for me is the marketing piece around my hair care product, which I didn't mention the name. It's Safo Hair, Safo Hair. On all social platforms, and that's the website too, so safohair.com. So marketing is like a whole job. People go to school for marketing. So like I am starting to dig in more around the marketing side of that and understanding, because I'm in a field that there's so many products, like your brand recognition and awareness has to be there, you know, and just figuring out strategies around that is a challenge for me right now that I am navigating through. But I think, school, school is school. NEMA is we're still figuring, we're still doing NEMA. I'm still going to the hospital and I'm still seeing patients. But I think the new space for me where I am being stretched and pulled right now is the hair care side of things.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, because I usually ask what's happening coming up now, and you are currently, building a Safo Hair and, being stretched but learning and evolving, sounds like. And
Yep.
so that, brings me us to my last question to close out this wonderful episode. What are you most proud of?
It's so funny. And I feel like the older I get, I'm just like, is this still like, should I still tell people this? But honestly, the thing that I am most proud of is going to Spelman College. I think that's what made me the person I am today and has given me a lifelong friendships and who are now like family that still kind of like are opening doors for me. And I feel like that experience of going to Spelman blesses me every step of my life. At every level of my life, there's always some blessing that takes me back to my connections at Spelman and friends at Morehouse too. So I say that was probably my proudest moment.
Oh, and I love it. And I think that is a great place for us to, round up our podcast, a proud moment of just know that your beginnings can continue to bless you throughout. They're not just springing boards. They just may be like, little, steps in the ladder throughout the time. And I feel the same way about some programs I did in undergraduate as well. They literally have helped me become a physician. So before we close out, throw out your, how people can connect with you, how people can connect with your organizations, products, etc.
Woo, so much. So I am on LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest way professionally. Just first name, last name, Elena Stinson.
With two L's?
Two L's, A-N-A, and E.
Right, E-L-L-A-N-A.
It's a very abnormal spelling, but I guess that's the best way. And then NEMA, of course, all of these are on LinkedIn, NEMA and Safo, but NEMA also has a webpage, NEMA.org, N-E-M-A.org. And then Safo Hair is on Instagram. And that's also the website. So I think, any questions or anything like that, the best way is just hit me up through LinkedIn. And if you're wanting to connect with any other organizations that I'm affiliated with, or just have any questions, I do have a lot of connections and always happy to help people. I tell people this all the time, people that work for NEMA, I was like, if y'all don't succeed, I don't succeed. So we all got to succeed together. Okay.
Oh, I love it. I love it. If y'all don't succeed, I don't succeed. Let's help each other build each other up. I love it. What a wonderful, Elena gem or Dr. Stinson gem to really, round out our podcast. You thrive, I thrive. Yeah. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you, Dr. Stinson, for being our esteemed guest today. And I want to thank everyone for watching or listening. If you're listening on a major podcast platform, just know that there's a video version of this episode on our YouTube at The Dynamic Doc. And please make sure to, tune in, subscribe, or follow if you're on the podcast platform. Definitely subscribe to our YouTube page and check out other episodes while you're there. So thanks everyone for listening or watching. And remember to live a life wholly on purpose, for a purpose. Stay healthy, stay safe, and be blessed. Thanks, Dr. Stinson.
Thank
Bye,
you,
everyone.
Thank you for having me.